The County of El Paso Public Works Department is offering sandbags at no cost or requirements to the public. The sandbags are outside of the facilities and are available 24 hours a day. The location of the county facilities are the following: the Road and Bridge Fabens Warehouse, located at 1331 North Fabens Street in Fabens, Texas, 79838. The Road and Bridge Canutillo Warehouse, located at 191 Canutillo Avenue in Canutillo, Texas, 79835. And the Road and Bridge Montana Warehouse, located at 14698 Van Lane, El Paso, Texas, 79938.
Commissioner Andrew Haggerty would like to invite you to his weekly breakfast meeting that takes place every Wednesday at 7:30 a.m. at Danny's Diner, located at 4690 Trans Mountain Road. Every week he has a different speaker who will be discussing topics of interest for the community. So if you live in the Northeast, West Side, or anywhere else in the county, come and join us for the breakfast meeting.
Don't wait in line, pay online. Visit the Financial Recovery Division website at http://www.epcounty.com/budget/financialrecovery.htm to make your payments online or find out more about our kiosk locations. We now accept payments on misdemeanor, felony, and justice of the peace cases.
You can now watch Commissioners Court meetings on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and search for El Paso County Commissioners or El Paso County, Texas. Subscribe to our channels to see our latest videos.
Did you know that you can save money on the cost of your medications? And doing so is easy. In 2015, the County of El Paso launched a prescription discount card program from coast to coast. The cards are available to all El Paso County residents free of charge and everyone qualifies. You can pick up a card at any county office location, Walgreens, Walmart, CVS, or Target pharmacies, or simply print the card at www.coastrx.com. Happy savings!
Did you know the County of El Paso's Purchasing Department is responsible for ensuring that all items and services needed by various county departments are purchased in the manner required by the state of Texas? Whether through formal sealed bids or smaller dollar quotations, the county purchasing team is dedicated to finding the best contracting return on your taxpayer dollars. Additionally, the Purchasing Department is responsible for the tracking of inventory within the county and properly disposing surplus through public auctions. For questions about how to become a vendor and compete for county contracts, or to learn more about public auctions, please contact us at telephone number 915-546-2048.
The 346 District Court Judge Angie Juarez Barril started the El Paso Veterans Treatment Court program in 2012 for veterans and active service members that have been arrested and charged with a felony or misdemeanor criminal offense. To be considered for the specialty court, the statutory criteria includes be a veteran or current member of the United States Armed Forces, including a member of the Reserves, National Guard, or State Guard, and suffer from a brain injury, mental illness, or mental disorder, including PTSD, or be a victim of military sexual trauma, all occurring or resulting from military service. Call Sylvia Serna, Veterans Program Director, at 915-546-2119, or email her at sserna@epcounty.com for any information.
Did you know that the County of El Paso's fixed asset control and inventory disposal is handled through the purchasing department? Throughout the course of each business year, the county holds live public auctions to dispose of aged equipment, vehicles, furniture, and other items that are no longer needed. To find out about upcoming auctions or to learn more about the county's inventory disposal process, contact the purchasing department at telephone number 915-546-2048.
Good afternoon. Today is Monday, August 6, 2018. Commissioners Court is meeting in special open session. Item number 2, regular agenda. Discuss and take appropriate action on the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget for the County of El Paso, Texas.
Good afternoon, Judge, Commissioners. As we start our FY19 budget hearings, I'm going to turn it over to Wally. He's going to give you all an overview, and then we're going to go into the revenue estimates.
Good afternoon, Judge, Commissioners. Wally Hargrove from the Office of Budget and Fiscal Policy. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Excellent. So, going to start off with the PowerPoint, which will have a budget overview, the tax rate overview, and then we'll finish with the budget register and the calendar. And then I'm going to cut over to Mr. Dion for an update on his revenue estimates, and then we'll go from there. So as part of the overview, of course, our hearings have started today, August 6th. Right now on our schedule, the hearings should conclude on August 15th. I will give you a little tax rate history and also give you some comparisons as to how El Paso County compares to other urban counties in the state of Texas. And that'll also include some budget comparisons. So overall, our general fund budget is right now proposed is just over $340 million. That $340 million includes the $30 million emergency fund balance that we have set up via policy. So if you look at our true operating and personnel expense projections, it's just over $310 million. The breakdown of that is off to your left, and you can see that public safety is one of the largest components of our budget at 35.77%, followed by general government at 33%. And the dollar amounts for each of these components are down in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, I will advise you that the general government, which comes in a close second to public safety, that $114 million also includes the $30 million reservation for emergencies. So if you back that $30 million out, our true general fund operating day-to-day budget for personnel and operating expenses is about $84 million. So that skews the percentages a little bit. The next closest category of expenditures is administration of justice at $71 million, followed by public works at just over $20 million. So 340 less the 30, 310 is where we're starting the year off. Fiscal year 2019, investing in our assets does have the continuance of the 1 penny allocation for equipment, vehicle, and capital improvements. 1 penny generates about $4.1 million. Also, it's the continued investment in departmental capital needs that's directly budgeted within your budgets and every county general fund budget across the board for equipment replacement. That's just over $1.75 million. This budget continues to leverage our vehicle registration fee that we use and partner with the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. That $10 fee on every vehicle that's registered in the County of El Paso this year is estimated to generate $6.6 million. And in turn is allowing us to do tens of millions of dollars of road improvements in the County of El Paso. This also includes an enhancement to the El Paso County mobility funding, which would allow us to leverage additional state infrastructure bank loans. So that budget went up by a few $100,000. We've got 2 of our construction projects on the El Paso County mobility plan that we're counting on using SIB loans later this year to leverage our match for that as well. This also includes stormwater allocation carryover. So
What are those 2 projects, sorry, Wally?
I'll get them for you. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I have them written down.
Commissioner, do you know if it's phase 2?
I think we talked about phase 1 for FM 1110.
Okay.
And I think the other one was Eastlink.
The SIP?
I'm not sure.
That's okay, we can keep going.
I'll get those right, sir. I don't remember those off the top of my head. This also includes right now not only a stormwater reappropriation of just over $3 million, but also the allocation of the 1 penny via fiscal financial policy. The court has also chosen to allocate 1 penny of its maintenance and operation taxes towards stormwater funding. So ideally, we've got about $7.25 million in the FY19 budget. $4 million new dollars, $3 million for carrying over what we did not use this year. We appropriated $4.92 million in FY18. So far, we have authorized the study. We've authorized the lease program that was on the budget last week, and the acquisition of the stormwater vehicles at $1.4 million. So the net remaining left over is about $3.25 million.
And you mentioned that, but a lot of that is tied up in grant match, in fund match. So a big chunk of that is tied up in those matches. If we get, depending on the number of grants we get awarded on that, on the stormwater projects. I want to say over 2 million of it is tied up in the matches. We know we won't get all 2 million, all 9 projects that or 11 projects that we requested, but we do expect or hope that we will get some. But we're carrying it over so it'll be available either to reallocate or because with this carryover, whatever we don't get funded and the new allocation, this gives us a good start on some of the projects, and also something to maybe look at any partners that will come on board working on projects in those areas.
And the 2 road projects, Commissioner, going back, one bullet on that is the FM 1110 Phase 1, and then the match portion on the Pelicano construction. This budget also includes continued enhancements to services that's invested in our county parks, the master plan, our criminal justice coordination department engaging in the studies that we are planning on doing for FY19. We have detailed those studies in our meeting notes for tomorrow. And the county's continued funding and enhancement of our economic action plan. Includes maintaining our service levels and meeting our contractual requirements for P25, contractual requirements for our cloud storage and other contracts such as our collective bargaining agreement. And then strategic investments that are just over $7 million, actually closer to $8 million for things that I have on your list that I'll go over in detail when we hit the budget register. Property tax rate history, fiscal year 2009, which is tax year 2018. People always ask me, why are we talking about the 2018 tax? This is for FY19. It's the calendar year that you're in that you're setting your tax rate. Our newly calculated effective tax rate is just under 45 cents at 0.447819. The county's FY18 tax rate is the same tax rate we've had for the last 3 years, FY17, 16, and 15, 0.452694 cents. That rate happens to generate an additional $2 million above the effective tax rate, but would truly be defined as a tax increase. Each 1% change you do on the effective tax rate generates $1.8 million. Every 1 penny change is $4.1 million in new revenue. A common question we get asked is, what is our tax rate as a percentage of what the average constituent? So I just picked one school district in El Paso. That happens to be the El Paso Independent School District. So if you look at the tax rates over here on the right-hand side, EPISD is $1.31, city at 80 cents. Now these are the 17 tax rates because no one has an 18 tax rate yet. The County of El Paso at 45 cents, followed by UMC at 25, and the community college at just over 14 cents. So you can see our slice of the local taxation pie. We represent about 15% of the average taxpayer's home. If you reside in the city limits, if you reside outside of the city limits, of course you have other tax rates. You have MUDs. You may have an emergency service district, and then that'll be those will replace the city of El Paso. This schedule you saw this morning, I'll spend a little bit of time on it, but not too much. Our property values went up this year by $1.9 billion, 4.93%, our highest increase in the last decade. Our effective tax rate is could generate an additional revenue of $8.4 million. That $8.4 million is because we're taxing 2 new things we didn't tax in the prior year. A little over $750 million of new construction, and average home values increased this year. This year's average home value in El Paso County, this is less the homestead exemption. I'm showing you the net taxable value. The actual home value was $129,638, but we have a minimum of $5,000 homestead exemption, so $124,638 generates $8.4 million. Taxes due on that home would be $558. If the county were to consider maintaining the tax rate at $45,2694, that is a tax increase, but it would generate current tax revenue above last year's revenue estimate of $10.4 million and would give you essentially $2 million above the effective tax rate. That number's right there. The change on an average home would go up by $6 a year or 51 cents a month. Today you set your ceiling. We propose the rollback tax rate, just under 48 cents. That rollback tax rate generates an additional $21.2 million. And if you were to go as high as that, the impact of a homeowner in El Paso County would be $38 a year or $3.23 a month. Questions on the tax rate table? This is a 10-year history, technically 11 now, since we're in 2018, of where our tax rate has been. And as you can see, for the last 4 years, we're just over the 45 cents. This is just a graphical representation to show you what the components of the tax rate are, the total tax rate at the top, running up to the 45 cent. And this is the debt component of our tax rate down at the bottom. Debt as a percentage of total tax rate, if you look over the last 11 years, we've averaged pretty close to about 11% of our tax rate. So on our 45 cent tax rate, a little over 4 cents of that is on debt. We continue to get positive confirmation from Moody's and Standard & Poor's, or Fitch and Moody's, that we have a relatively low debt burden, and our debt to taxation ratio is rather low as well. If you were to take and smooth out our tax rates and take the consumer price index into account, this is the same 11-year history. This year's CPI as of June, and we use June as our benchmark month. We do that for cost of living increase for employees. We use the same thing for our tax rate CPI. So you can see it going back where our CPI has been. But had we taken CPI into consideration with the tax rates, you'll see that in almost every year, with the exception of a couple, our tax rates have come in just under where they may have been if we would have taken CPI into a full impact. So even this year, with a CPI, the tax rate would be 46.58, and our last year's tax rate was 45.26. This just puts the CPI and the tax rate onto the same graph to show you where our tax rate has been in the blue, and had we gone with tax increases similar to the CPI, where the tax rate would have gone in orange. This is our FY18 tax rate, which is your 17 tax rate, since we hadn't taken action at this date and time, to show you comparatively with urban counties. El Paso is right here at number 3 at 45.25 cents, with Collin being the lowest. You'll see a little bit of an inverse relationship, though, as we get into some other slides down the way. This just faces graphically where the 10 urban counties fall in tax rate. Hidalgo with the highest at 59, Collin the lowest at 19, and there's El Paso in the 3rd rank. This is the 2018 property value at full market. So at full market, we're at 50 million, but at taxable, we're just over $41 million, 41 billion, excuse me. So this also ranks property value from lowest in Hidalgo to the highest in Harris. And like I said, you'll see a correlation where you see a 19-cent tax rate, but a very high property value. So this one maps the market value of property in the 10 urban counties with the tax rates. So where you see relatively low property values, you see tax rates sitting up high. Where as you see the values pick up, you start to see, if I were to run a line through that, you'll see a pretty close to trending line of property values going up and tax rates going down. County population, El Paso County ranks 7 out of the top 10. 3rd.
We're 8th now.
Is it 8th now? Okay. This is population size to general fund budgets and amount that we spend per capita in these communities. So El Paso ranks right here at 389. As you place that on the budget to population numbers, you'll see a similar slide down on population to budget, and then it takes and places the average spent per capita on budget to the average spent per capita and showing you where the average is and where the actuals are. So El Paso sits here just a little bit above the average at 390. I'll now go into the budget register overview, and then we'll talk a little briefly about the budget and tax calendar upcoming. Any questions on any of those slides before I proceed?
Yeah.
Sir? Okay.
I was going to mention that. It's always open up.
So here's the budget register. It's structured similarly to last year's budget register. This will be one of the few Excel spreadsheets we bring up in hearings this year. But this one, because of its size, pretty much functions this way. I sent you the budget register a little bit before the meetings. So FY19 at $340 million. Comparatively, our FY18 budget is $327 million. Preliminary revenue estimates from the auditor's office were just under $265 million. I do want you to note this does not include new tax revenue. At the time Mr. Dion certified his revenues on July 19th, I think I got those. We had yet to receive our property values and had yet to calculate our property taxes.
But
So
I'll just add in there, historically, I never touched tax revenues. You're the governing body, you set the rate, and I'm not gonna second guess whether you're gonna lower or raise the tax rate. So I typically left it at the current tax revenue. Okay, but today, if I hear something from you all, I'll definitely modify the amount, and obviously if it's the same rate, that's a big jump, so I'll factor that in.
The same or even the effective will, because this
Effective
doesn't
is
even
too,
include
yeah.
the new property either.
yeah,
So-
at a minimum of the effective, you're looking at $8.4 million
Yeah.
in additional revenue.
Then what's here?
That's not in this number.
That's
And
above
I have a
there.
placeholder for it when we go down the register. So right now, if you look at the amount required to balance the budget, it would be $75 million, but you have to remember that takes into account the emergency reserve that we are intentionally budgeting, so we have the ability to react swiftly to a catastrophic event. The true designation, less that catastrophic event reserve that we've been designating, is $45 million. Mr. Dion's fund balance estimate for September 30th this year is $79 million. As a reminder, last year was $82 million, so we have in there a little bit of erosion of fund balance by about $3 million. That would leave undesignated $33.1 million, or 10.69%. Right now, your financial policies set a fund balance ratio of somewhere between 10 to 15% of the subsequent year's operating budget. But again, I'll qualify it. This number isn't taking into account $8.4 million of tax revenue.
Because this
So-
is the projected fund balance as of September 30th.
Yes, sir.
That 8 million is for the 19.
Correct. But just from a planning perspective, you know, I don't want you to think, oh wow, we're already down to 10.6.
Because the more your revenues go up, the less you're going to draw down into that.
Absolutely. So I know Mr. Dion, they just closed the fiscal month of July yesterday. So during this week, Mr. Dion and his team are doing new revenue estimates. Essentially, this will be our last revenue estimate before we adopt the budget, because right now we're slated to adopt the budget on August 27th. We would not have closed the month of August by then, unless something significant were to happen. I would anticipate that the next revenue estimate we receive from him this week will be the revenue estimate that we would go with for our budget hearings.
You're not going to receive it this week, though. You asked me to get it to you by the 15th. So I'm going to do my best, and we're going to be tag teaming with staff to get that done as soon as possible.
Yeah, we have to have our final revenue estimate by the time we finish our hearings, because you'll need that to set your official tax rate on August 27th. For consideration in your budget, in this $340 million top number you have up here, are $12.6 million worth of additions. I've got most of those listed on the far right-hand side of the budget register, so that if the court decides it wants to pull any of those out and not include those will be easy. Pull that number out. The number that would draw us down to 10%. Again, this is prior to the tax certification. Is an additional $1.9 million. So every year, you like to know is, if we were to add and subtract to that number, what is the number that gets us to either the upper end of our financial policy or the lower end. Right now, that 1.9 gets you at the low end at 10%. So if I were to plug 1.9 in there right now, we'd be right at 10%.
And that's
Prior to-
but that's after the 12 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
have
prior to the tax rate coming in.
we have about $12.6 million worth of things that we've either heard the court say that they're interested in, or that the court has traditionally considered, or last year at the end of budget, you may recall, we had a few items that we knew were pending, but we were finalizing, and the court asked us to show you those as part of this, all the potential cost things that we needed to reserve money for. So those are in that 12.6 million too. Things that are the P25 closeout bill with the city. There's several things that are in there that they'll go over.
I've got most of them, not all of them. I don't have an exhaustive list. I got most of them listed here. As I mentioned when we kicked off, 2 new revenues that aren't in here yet is, at a minimum, if we went with the effective tax rate, that's an additional $8.4 million. And I have received indication from Mr. Guion that I know his preliminary revenue estimates, we anticipate are going to go by an additional $2.9 million for the change in population for the federal prisoners that we currently have a contract with the U.S. Marshals. So those two factors would add to that $1,945,000, in addition to any other revenue enhancements I receive from him this time next week or early next week. The items I have listed on the register, some of these are in the $12.6 million, others are not. The first part of the schedule up here, you see here, STEP, COLA, elected officials, salary, staffing recommendations, any change on retirement, grant matches, and operating costs related to staffing recommendations are not in this 12.6. So as we were to go through here, as we did last year, if the court were to grant any of these, I'll just copy what's in that cell, move it over, and draw down on what our financial number is. Thank you. Things that aren't in there that we've discussed in our meetings, strategic meetings, or just in the meetings we've had with the court, where that's expressed interest to county administration to include in the budget.
They are in there.
Yes, ma'am. Things that are in the 12.6 are things such as election hardware with a possible lease, the downtown jail study, regional transit, management employee training, community infrastructure improvement plan, future water, wastewater needs, medical contract changes with the jail, the auditing and operation control functions, criminal justice action plan, Coliseum study, what is the best use for the Coliseum, and a needs assessment, cross-border survey, airport planning zoning, international metro relations, subdivision regulations, community IDs, the stormwater penny, the reappropriation of what we have not spent or committed to spend in FY18, that we are going to continue to invest in that for FY19. Now, as we draw down on that, so if next year we end up spending that $3 million that we didn't spend this year, then that penny would right size back down to a penny unless the court decided it wanted to invest above and beyond that 4.1. So for FY19, that could be a one-time expense. Some of these, from a study perspective for FY19, a large number of them may be one-time expenditures because we're not going to engage in that study year after year after year. At that point, we'll decide what we're going to do with the results of the study and how are we going to choose to fund the recommendations. Typically, most of these may result in a bond issuance if there are capital enhancements that we're going to do.
The elections hardware, that would be eliminated if we were to use the bond money.
Well, so
Correct.
you all already directed me to look at that one as one of the options to fully vet and bring back. So that one would come out.
Yeah, if we're going to run the bond option, then we'll pull that number right out. So last year, we brought to you a long list of items that we need to address at the end of the hearing. So as we prepare the budget and do the book, when we close it and we do a full reconciliation, or we get calls or emails from departments, we're like, we didn't include this or we excluded that. These are the items that typically we've done at the end of the hearings, and I received pretty clear feedback. We don't want to do it at the end. What are the pending items list? So this is the pending items list. So we've had some, those that are in red are things that would be coming out of the 12.6. Those are the that are in black are things that need to go into the 12.6. The biggest one up there, the JPD utility analysis. When we did our utility interface for our year-end utility adjustment that we do, when we did that interface, we inadvertently left JPD out of it because they didn't want to override JPD's recommended budget, and that was an oversight on our part that should have been taken into account. The operational study on the auditor's office, we had it funded, and I had it funded in administration, but also the auditor had requested it under his council of judges budget. My understanding is we wanted to have a placeholder in both, not a single area.
No, there's two separate.
Or two separate studies.
There's right, two separate
the
studies.
interpretation on our part was we're collaborating. It's one study. I need to make sure I've got that funded as two separate studies. So
well, we're going to do it collaboratively, but we don't know if it's going to run higher than the original estimate
right.
since we're doing two studies in one.
Back, yeah.
So we need the money reserved.
So I've put that back. July 23rd, we had a new homeless shelter grant, and the match needed to be taken into account, so I've added that in. I'll back up for the ones I skipped. We had some staffing reductions in FY18 that were still in our staffing table for positions that Mr. Stathis had authorized to remove from his budget. Those were still there. I'm taking those out for FY19. I've sent an email over to Mr. Dion. Right now I have an amount of $80,000 in for revenue estimates for juvenile detention. But the juvenile board approved $150,000, so I have a $77,000 difference in between revenue estimate and fund balance. I'm working with Mr. Dion's staff to make sure I've got a solid number on that, because the juvenile board is authorized to spend what they bring in for juvenile detention revenue, but my revenue estimate and fund balance didn't match what the board authorized, so there's a reconciliation there. If I get an assurance that there is that fund balance there and everything totals to 150, then I can take that back out. And I've got 3 fleet changes in there from fleet. One for fleet management for $10,500, one for a reduction in SO patrol that is below what's in the book, and then a transfer of some fleet from the sheriff's over to fleet management for an additional $5,000 reduction. So those are 3 recommended reductions, just over $44,000. They're in your book now, but we need to take action on taking them out. That is most of the major items. There's little small things in there. I have it listed on here, but I think I've covered most of them.
Page 25.
Any?
Is carried over? Or it's reserved in there?
I believe so.
That's within the sheriff's office.
It's within the sheriff's.
Okay. The back payment to the city for a couple of years. We're negotiating a couple
Yeah,
of years.
I'm checking out. I'm checking. That's the one last thing. I do have P25 money in there. I think I'm good if we go with the amended budget for P25, because we had carried over 30,000 and there's 30,000 remaining this year. So I asked Frank to double check, but I'll make sure P25 funding is adequate. I can put it on as a question mark, but I think we're good.
Okay, because that sounds normal.
Okay. Questions on the budget register?
Could I, when you have the meetings, Wally, could I get a copy after the meeting?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. I just attacked Commissioner's Court. I forgot. I needed to give you. Yes, sir. And then off to the side, it's just the upper and lower ranges that we use as calculations to see what tolerance we have to hit that 10% or the 15%. And on the same file, I've got our county tax rates to show what they generate in additional revenue as well.
For the revenue estimate, I think it would be helpful if keeping the tax rate constant, if we were just to look at what the certified values were and basing the tax rate off of the certified values.
So just putting in for the growth, you're saying.
Right, yeah.
And that's what I wanted, the indication for you also. I'll just add in the 8, not the 2, because you haven't made a decision.
You mentioned keeping the tax rate constant.
At least for the estimate purposes. I mean, what
constant
the
at the 45 to 20
or effective rate?
Current rate.
Probably
the effective brings, you're going to come
effective
down.
Effective is 8.4.
Yeah. I mean,
current tax rate.
I would think
this effective rate is the safe rate.
Mike, that's certainly the safe rate, but we're adding a pretty significant number of strategic investment items to the budget that I'm going to encourage you to. We do need a sustainable, ongoing revenue to offset those as well.
And so my next question was regarding the 45 million in the designated fund balance. I mean, I know by law, county governments and any municipal can't run a deficit, but I mean, I've always kind of raised this every year. I mean, it's fair to say that the 45 million is essentially what's needed to cover the deficit in the budget because our revenues don't match our expenditures.
That's required to balance the budget.
And I've raised this every year because I'm concerned that number keeps growing every year, and there's just sort of a wider gap between our revenues and expenditures. But is that gap that we have in essentially the funding needed to cover the deficit, is that common among Texas counties for counties of our size, that we're using as much of the fund balance reserve to cover what we're not meeting in sales and property tax?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to go look at their budgets to see what that designation level is, to see maybe that's something I could look at adding to that comparative.
And I just say that because, if we've done a good job of keeping the tax rate level, but we haven't really capped growth, and we're just inevitably going to be in a position where we're just going to have to raise taxes every year. I know I say this every year, but that fund balance, so long as we take money out of the fund balance to cover what our revenues are not generating, we're inevitably going to reach a point where we're not going to be making our fund balances. So as we analyze growth and all, I think that's just something we need to take into consideration. Is that how large that the fund balance to cover our deficit just continues to grow.
That's true.
So at this point, what am I hearing? At least go with the effective tax rate.
I would say, I would say the effective. But that either one gives us at least a better, closer picture than what.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The effective is $2 million less than the current tax rate. Okay. Anyone else in the court? Commissioner, you look like you had some questions.
I'm processing. No, I don't have any questions. I think we're definitely in an interesting spot, and I'm proud that we've not raised taxes or the tax rate in the last 3 years. There's going to be a time when we need to. I don't think there's anyone questioning that. I think we've done a lot of things that are good, and we still have a lot of things where we can find ways to save money. This is something we need to continue to look at. I appreciate Commissioner President's points. We're in a weird spot this year by the values going up so much higher that even if we lower our tax rate, people are still going to be mad at us. So it's kind of a weird situation we're in. Of course, I always get yelled at all the time that we're pieces of garbage, we keep raising our rates. We haven't. So, I don't know, it's just going to be an interesting 2 weeks. So, unfortunately, just because our tax values go up, that usually means it's because our county's getting larger and more people are coming into it. And that's more buildings and more streets and more areas that we need to patrol, and people need to remember that as well.
There are more services, absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to hop out of the register if there's no further questions.
We'll update this also based on the revenue discussion today, that once Mr. Dion updates his, and then as we go along, things that the court's interested in taking out or putting in, we'll update it daily.
So last item I'll close before I look at Mr. Dion and his revenue fund balance estimates is, you each have a copy of this. So this is the budget hearing schedule for now through the 15th. So I had an item on the agenda, UMC budget discussion. But because it's UMC specific, I'm going to add that to Friday's agenda. Our posting today is just county budget. The rest of the day, we're going to go over Mr. Dion's presentation and time permits the judicial management metrics. Tomorrow, first thing in the morning, we're going over that minute. We'll do a recap from the prior day with no action from today. I'll probably forego the recap but I will see if there's any questions that came up overnight from today. We'll do the administrative accountability policy compliance overview, and then we'll go into the departmental presentations. Those departmental presentations right now are slated to start at 9:30, and will run us pretty much the entirety of the day. departments will be taking somewhere between 15, a few larger departments, Public Works and others, will take a little more than 15 minutes. We'll have a morning and break, and lunch is being provided. We'll have a lunch break sometime in the 12 o'clock area. We're not setting that hard fast, but it'll be sometime in the 12 o'clock area. And then if needed, and there's any changes tomorrow, then we'll do a budget register recap. We'll pick up the hearings tomorrow morning, and Wednesday morning. We'll go over our CIP recommendations. We'll do a deep dive into our general administrative account and our match accounts. We'll have legal counsel here for litigation overview. We will go into executive session for that. We'll also have an overview and analysis of outside counsel versus what we paid for settlement cost and internal cost. We'll do a brief review of our other funds: debt service, capital projects, enterprise, and special revenue funds. We won't go deep into those special revenues because as departments are coming up tomorrow, we will have the impacts in your budget for departments who have access to special revenue budgets and the detailed changes on those special revenue budgets. So we'll be discussing their general fund and special revenue budgets while they're here. We'll wrap up Wednesday with hot tax discussion, and then we will go over and ratify and discuss our special fees that require action of the court during our budget process. That is the district clerk records management fee, your county clerk records archive fee, both of which, as of today, you've accepted the plans for FY19, you've accepted the proposals and authorized each of the clerks to continue levying those fees. We'll also ratify during our budget process, Ms. Rivera Palacios, our Public Works Director, has been working with her staff and has just recently as late last week, sent us the detail on the new road cut and pipeline cut fees. So you took action on those last week in Commissioner's Court to adopt that policy plan and set those fees. But as a matter of statute, we just need to ratify the setting of those fees and inclusion in the budget. Right now, those fees are not in your budget. Mr. Dion has received the information he needs to come up with a revenue certification to include those in the budget.
I think we also have to do sheriff's and constables.
Okay. Well, I guess set that over to legal also. Yeah, we may have to discuss the sheriff and constable fees as well. Just checking with legal real quick. Thursday, the 9th this week, we will do a few outside agencies. There is a department that wanted to do their budget presentation and their tell your story, but was not available on Tuesdays, so we'll go over them. We'll go over the budget side of your strategic plan. So you just saw on the budget register a number of items under the strategic plan. Now we'll go over what the fiscal impact is for some of those, and I'll start to receive direction from the court to continue funding those or consideration for exclusion in the proposed budget. Any other initiatives that have been brought up that we don't have funded in this, that the commissioners have brought to our attention, we'll have other court initiatives discussed on Thursday's agenda. Policy updates. You've got your operation management policy with Ms. Keller, the financial policies that we sent you a couple weeks ago with our office. Originally had all the policies here, but Human Resources has asked that for good flow and of their information that they're going to present to you on Friday, which is pretty much our personnel day. Ms. Carrillo would like to discuss the recommended personnel policies on the day we're taking action on personnel, which will be Friday the 10th. We have an economic development discussion that afternoon, and then Friday is, for the most part, is two component discussions. It will be further tax rate discussion, and we will have our personnel day overview. And UMC, we will be adding UMC to the register as well.
On what date?
That's on Friday the 10th.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Just as far as like the county and the UMC tax rate.
Next week, no hearings after court on Monday. Resume hearings Tuesday morning, the 14th. We've got additional outside agencies, one county department in there. JPD was not available this week at all during the rest of the week. So we have our one ESD. We're not doing both ESDs on that date. I did email you ESD number 1's budget on Friday. They sent that over to us. ESD 2 is meeting on their budget Tuesday the 14th. So I'll send that to you upon receipt of ESD 2. But we're going to have to take action and discussion on ESD 2's budget during the normal course of our Monday meetings, because they their budget will not make it into our hearing proceedings.
And one of them has requested election on a sales tax. The one that doesn't have the sales
The
tax now.
SD1 is looking at the possibility of doing the sales tax election.
They've already requested from elections to get on the ballot.
Also, that day on the 14th, to the extent we haven't done any decision-making, we'll do a hard start on our decision-making for the day. That evening at 5:30 and 6. 5:30 will be the county's tax hearing, 6 o'clock will be the hospital district hearing. And as we have with prior days, we'll do a budget register recap on that day. August 15th will be the final day of decision-making for the budget hearing, and that's what we have planned today. Friday, August 17th will be our second tax rate public hearing. Same thing, 5:30 and 6 p.m. Then our staff will work on any changes that are being proposed and recommended by the court to get those keyed into our system, run the reports, and file the official proposed budget. And we will file that to the county clerk's office, to the auditor's office, as required by statute, and are planning our budget hearing and our tax rate for August 27th. Depending on the action that you take on elected official salaries, which will be this Friday, we'll be required, if there's any proposed increases to elected official salaries, to publish a notice, notify each elected official of their proposed salary. They'll have 5 days to grieve that salary, 5 calendar days, not business days. And we will schedule a salary grievance hearing if we do receive any official salary filings. And that will take place before we adopt the budget, because the results from those salary grievance hearings must have action taken on it in the adopted budget. Any questions on the upcoming hearing calendar or tax and budget adoption calendars? All right. Hearing none, I'm going to go over to Dion's.
We have a...
Yep, I'm going to bring it right over here. Thanks.
Okay, Edward Dion, County Auditor. As I was discussing earlier, this is based on June. We closed July last night. And the projection, I have a deadline to get the projection from July as of the 15th. So Barbara Franco, my first assistant, we're going to be tag teaming because we need to make sure we get the revenues done. I have staff using New Brain to come up with their projection. I'll come with my projection to make sure we vet it out as tight as we possibly can. Wally's already mentioned a couple things. The major changes that we're going to be doing in the next round for some revenue changes, for which I typically am conservative, one of them being federal prisoners. And we'll be talking about that in just a few minutes. Okay, I've provided the preliminary reports to budget and policy. And those are pretty detailed. I'm not going to go into all of those right now, but I provided them in PDF. Revenues by fund type, fund, and object. And then the same report broken down by department, because now we're trying to do revenues and expenses by department. And I've given them the full screen account for all the projections. I've given them summary projections on the expenditures by department. And this is only for the budgeted funds. And then a summary fund balance for all funds. The overview, I'm going to basically be talking about fund type. I'm just going to focus on some major increases and decreases, but I'm really going to focus on general fund at this point. Actuals of 2017 versus what I'm projecting for 18. The estimate of 18 versus what I'm projecting as the estimate for 19. And then the 2018 versus the 2017 comparison on the actuals, estimated versus 19, estimate 19 versus 18 actuals, and then the revenue estimate 2018 versus 2019. First one is just an overall summary by fund type, and as you can see, the 2018 budget is 262,681. I reduce it by any designations because it's not a good comparison if I'm showing a designation which never materializes. So the estimated budget without any balancing accounts versus the projected revenues of 270 shows that the current budget and the projected revenues is anticipated on bringing in 7.9 million over what was estimated. And I'll be talking about it in a minute. The majority of that is the federal prisoners, which we'll be addressing in the next go around. This is just the detail by character for the general fund of that 7.9 million. The bulk of the increases, as I said, about 6.4 million related to charges for services, and that's basically because of the federal prisoners. We're budgeting right now at 550. We've run the numbers, looked at the last 5 years. No matter how we look at it, 650 is a decent number. I asked Wally to reach out to the sheriff because this is not indicating that there's any guarantee for the sheriff, but just because of the actual Fed prisoners that we've been experiencing and then the revenue trend, we feel it's at this point justified to go ahead and raise that. You're still going to have a favorable variance because it's been a heck of a lot more than 650. But over the years, it's gone like this. I mean, we've had years where we're $1 million down on the revenues. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and be bringing that up, and that's going to be an impact of about 2,920,000 in additional revenue estimated for 19. This is the actuals of 17 versus my projected actuals for 18. And if you general fund, I'm basically showing a positive 5.5 million that we're going to probably bring in over this time last year. Once the dust settles, assuming we have our audit and everything, that will be up about 5.5 million. And this is the detail of it, about 5.5 million. The majority of that is property taxes. It's about 4.4 million. Sales taxes up about 1.6 million right now. Interest is up a little over $1 million. And we've had some decreases. The fines are down about 922,000 right now. But with the next pass, we may see a spike in that because it's kind of seasonal. It's hard to tell sometimes.
Again, going back to that last slide, we don't know where the drop is right now to date with the fines.
We've been watching this. It seems like cases are down too.
Well, is it the number of cases?
470 of the 922. I showed about half of it, 476, related to fines and forfeits, and then 455 related to judgments and settlements, which are sporadic, which we receive settlements in 1 year but not in the next. So half of that is because we're just not getting settlements we were getting in prior years, so it's timing. But they all go into that fine and forfeiture line item.
Thank you.
The other area that was going down is the 706,000. About of the 707, 292 was a state AG child support. We've heard from the department that something's going on at the state, that they're just not giving the contracts for the child support cases, so that the revenues are going down. We had a reimbursement reduction of 145,000, and then we're double checking with the sheriff because we have some contracts for animal control that were not renewed for whatever reason. There's no revenue coming in on those this fiscal year. Okay, the estimate of 2018 versus 19. Right now I'm showing an increase in revenue of about $1.8 million, but I can tell you right now with the things we've just talked about, there's going to be about 8.3 coming in for the new valuations. There's going to be $2.9 million coming in for federal prisoners, so that number is going to jump. It's going to jump almost $11 million increase. But just understand, when I don't budget for it, it still comes in and ends up in the fund balance. But now it's going to actually be appropriated, so it'll be basically there to spend it now, not once you receive it and then counted as part of your reserves. Just looking at the detail for the general fund of that 1,000,008, the majority of that is taxes, and you're going to see that spike by another 8.3 once I make that adjustment. You're also still going to see the interest go up significantly. And this is the 18 actual projected versus the estimate, just to kind of get an idea of my projection versus what's actually coming in. Right now it shows that the projection for 18 is 270, and the income that I'm projecting is 264. And if you go into the detail of that, you can see where the declines are. Charges for services are 6.2. That's going to change when I add the new estimate for the federal prisoners. Let's see, taxes. Fines, as I discussed, that one's actually, I'm estimating there's probably going to be an increase there. There was a one-time decrease for the current year. Okay, just the general fund overview. We ended last year at 83.1. The current projection, and like I say, it's all going to be adjusted once the new estimate come in. The projected revenues are 270.5. Projected expenses are 276.2 for a net of 5.5. And right here I say 77.5. But on the monthly, it's 79. On my monthly, I do an aggregate projection, which is usually on target. So even though I'm saying 77 here, I work with budget and policy on some of the expenditure trends. There's some items in the budget that may or may not get expended. So that has a direct effect on what that bottom line fund balance is going to be. So I'm still confident that we're going to hit the 79, and actually may go up even more once I go through the July numbers and see what's coming through. And the next one, this is what I showed you all in the monthly. For 18, it showed 79. I stand by that number, and like I say, I think it's going to hit around that ballpark or a little bit better. These are some things that I think we pointed out. We talked to budget about it. And it doesn't happen until September of 19, but all of those fees get chopped in half. So I don't anticipate it's going to be a major impact on the revenue projections. So you may see just a little bit going down, but that's something the legislature, maybe in January, maybe there'll be an initiative to kind of put something in the pipeline so that these don't get reduced, or they put new enabling legislation to just go ahead and get them rolling again for another couple of years for these projects, because I know the need's there.
I know that this is already something on our legislative list. And I know the district clerk and county clerk are already very well aware too with their associations.
And with that, if you all had any questions.
Ed, you might have already covered it, but when did you say your new numbers are going to be coming in?
My new estimates?
Yeah.
The goal is no later than the 15th of August. If I get them done sooner, I mean, that's why we're going to be tag teaming. I'll be listening into these meetings too, but I'm going to be over there working on my revenue estimates. I have staff working on New Brain, working on their projections so that we can compare, and I'll provide them as soon as I possibly can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is to go over the judicial management metrics. We went over these last year in the budget, and we just do a quick overview of where we're at on the judicial management metrics. So currently, we track multiple measures on our overall judicial system. And we report on these quarterly. We do both a report, it's right here. I actually have a printed copy for each of you. So this is the overall report as of the second quarter of FY 2018. So we update these. We have a policy that once a quarter closes, we wait 15 days before we run the reports, which is shorter than what we used to wait. We used to wait 30 days, but we've been able to streamline and shorten that. And now we start running the reports, and then we publish no later than 45 days after the end of a quarter is our goal. Inside your report, you'll see there's a table in the very front that shows you the breakdown of the different types of cases. This is based on Odyssey for each court, what type of cases they have. But then when we go to our actual measures, I'm going to show you actually not just in the report. I like looking at them here. So the first. Let me just The first thing we measure is access and fairness. This is access and fairness to the courthouse. This is not one of the you don't see it right here as one of these individual measures yet. We will be adding it, but the reason why you don't see it here is because we've been updating our website now, and by November we're going to actually have a button here for the access and fairness. And this is one of the basic needs for justice. Do you have access to justice, and is it administered fairly? So in your report, you'll see we've now done the survey 2 years in a row. The survey is done on a specific day every year, and we just get a rating from users of the courts. How accessible is it to get here and find the courts? And then do you feel like you were treated fairly? And there's multiple questions that are asked of individuals who participate in the survey. So this year, what I noticed is access to the court was actually higher. The responses were higher than previous years. So in your printout, you'll see the dark blue, the top line is the 2017 survey results. The bottom line is the 2018 survey results. So generally, across the board, you see some increases and improvement as far as access to the court. Court hours made it easy to do business, able to find parking in a timely manner. All of these areas improved. I think the only one that stayed is court staff paid attention to my needs and treated with courtesy and respect. Both of those stayed steady but high at 85 and 89%. Then fairness, the questions on fairness, there's actually a slight decline. And I do believe the Council of Judges has already gone over these survey results. But the way my cases were handled was fair, has gone down from the respondents this year. Everything except for I was treated the same as everyone else. Everyone felt like they weren't treated differently than anyone else that was accessing services. That's the only one that increased, but the rest seemed to decline. The next measure is clearance rate. So this is the number of cases coming in versus the number of cases going out. I'm going to show you here by quarter. This is felonies are the light color, misdemeanors are the dark blue. And when someone goes online to our website, all they have to do is roll over the chart and it shows them the actual numbers. So for, let's see, clearance rates, yeah, by quarter, this is the incoming cases, this is the disposed cases, and so this would be the clearance rate. So for quarter one, 98% of felonies were disposed. That means for every felony that came in, 0.98 felonies were disposed. And then same on misdemeanors. For every one that came in, 0.91 was disposed. And then for quarter two, you see a significant increase. So the clearance rates are better than 100%. What you always want your clearance rates to be at 100% or better, because that means we're addressing some of our case backlog. you're getting more cases cleared out than had come in. So you'll see the felonies were at 132 and the misdemeanors were at 107 clearance rate. Okay. And then the next item in the report is time to disposition. This is on page 13. And I apologize, I'm flipping from the report to the website. If it'd be easier for me to stick to one, I'd be glad to. But I'm just trying, the website gives us that specific where you can go to a specific measure. So this is measure 3, page 13. Oh, I apologize, my pages do not line up. Page 21. So this is time to disposition. This is the percentage of cases disposed or otherwise resolved within established timeframes. These timeframes are based on standards, national standards. So let me go here just a second. And the report I gave you gives you a much more detailed breakdown by courts. I'm giving you a very high-level overview in general. So time to disposition for the second quarter through the second quarter of FY 2018. The percentage of felonies closed in 0 to 90 days, 13%. 33% were 0 to 180 days. 56% were 365 days. And then on misdemeanors, 12% were closed within 60 days. 19% were closed within 90 days, and 36% were closed within 180 days. And then if you go to the standards, they're in your report. We generally reference the National Center for State Court Standards, which you'll see that they recommend 75% of felonies be closed within 90 days, and we were at 13%. 90% of felonies closed within 180 days. We were at 33%. And then you should have 98% closed within 365 days. And we had 56% of our cases closed within 365 days. And then it goes on with misdemeanors. Misdemeanors, you have a shorter time frame. Basically, you should have 98% of them closed within 180 days. And we're running at 36% closed within 180 days. And the chart on this is on the top of page 22. And it is also here online in the report.
Is there any way to measure whether other counties are similar to where we're falling in that percentage range, or if they are all much closer to the NCSC standards?
So we are actually one of the leading counties on court tools and on measures. Not all counties have them. Some do. We could do comparisons to other counties that do have them, but not all of them have them. Okay, so we are now down to measure 4. And again, in the backup, you'll see a clearance rate by judge by quarter for the last year. So, and same with the time to disposition. You'll see each judge's second quarter time to disposition. So anytime that someone's running again over 100% on clearance rates, they're clearing out more than they had come in. If they're going below it, they're having more come in than they cleared out. And then on time to disposition, just where they're at as compared to the standards. Measure 4 is the age of active cases. So this is how old basically cases are that are active. So you can see in general age of active cases pending, and then you go across all of the misdemeanor cases that are over a year old, how old they are. So some judges have very few cases of their caseload that are over a year old. Some judges have a significant amount of cases that are over a year old. And again, these are misdemeanor cases, which they recommend that 98% of them be closed within 6 months. So we really need to work on these ones that are over a year old. And then if it's blue, it's criminal only, and if it's gray, it's civil and criminal. We obviously have more direct control over timing on criminal cases, but civil cases, you're also working with private attorneys. But in both cases, you have private attorneys representing or public defenders representing clients and the DA who may have timing issues. So that was the second quarter or first quarter. This is first quarter felony cases over a year old. You do want to have 98% of felonies closed within a year. And you can see by judge where we're running. So our felony average is 28.4%. So again, we'd like to move some of these more quickly. And then again, that's just second quarter for the same measures. And this is a look back for the entire year. Our next measure is measure 5, trial date certainty. This is a new one we've added. So this is the report of trial settings. And then trial date certainty. Percentage with goal with 2 or few case settings. So misdemeanor jury trials 64% happen with 2 or fewer settings on a jury trial. Felonies with a jury trial 44% with 2 or fewer case settings. And then bench trials 100% came in with that they were heard within 2 or fewer case settings. On civil cases, 29% of them were heard within 2 or less, case settings. Okay, measure 6, this is the reliability and integrity of our case files. Sorry, my thing freezes up here. So this measure, when it was originally created, it was based on files being paper files, but now times have changed and files are mostly electronic. So this measure is being isn't extremely modern friendly, if you will. And so we're working on completing this measure, but they have done a study so far. I don't think it's on here, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get it to go down. I'm going to keep going through the paper copy if that's okay. So we are doing this. It's a study where they pull 50 case files and they audit them for the contents and then also how long it takes to locate a file. Generally on active cases, you're going to be able to locate the file immediately because it's electronic. But it then is all the records in the file that are supposed to be in that file. That's the accuracy, the integrity of the case files. So we're studying that one. We will have that one updated as well by and online in November. Another one that we're working on, and it's in our strategic plan, is Measure 7A, 7B, and 7C. We expect to have those updated. Our goal is to have them done by 2019, that goal, but we expect that we'll actually be ahead of schedule on that one. And that's about collections. Ensuring fairness in legal financial obligations. Plus, this goal was updated recently as far as the definition from the National Center for State Courts. And then management of legal financial obligations. And then fair practices for legal financial obligations. Measure 8, effective use of jurors. So, National Center for State Courts talk about the number of jurors that you call versus the number that are actually used, and then what jurors you basically want 5% or higher for juror yield. And so it's the number of citizens selected who are qualified and available to serve, expressed as a percentage of the total number of prospective jurors summoned. So this graph shows the actual numbers reporting to service, and then the actual yield. You'll see in October of 2017, we had 37% yield. November 17, 34%, and December of 17, we had 36%.
And what did you say was the ideal?
This says 5%, but actually what I understand is, I think this is reversed. That actually you should be able to use the majority of jurors you call.
Yeah.
So I need to double check where that 5% or higher is coming from. I know the trainer that came and trained us on court tools told us that he was from Arizona, and he told us that their courts run about a 96% juror utilization. So they use about 96% of the jurors they call. I think that's an extreme, but you can see that we're.
And maybe, Chrissy, I apologize, but maybe we can have a comparison. What are other Texas counties? What's their range?
Okay, yes, sir. So you see the second quarter, January, February, and March in graph. How many reported for service? How many were never told to report? Sent to a courtroom for voir dire? Utilized in incomplete jury selection? Selected and completed jury? And challenged or removed in completed jury selection. Okay, and then the next measure, measure 9, court employee satisfaction. The Council of Judges has run this every year, but it is not recommended that this is one you share publicly. This is for internal use. But the Council of Judges does get a report on their employee satisfaction results every year. Measure 10 is the cost per case. We are working on completing that measure right now. We're compiling all the data for that one. I think we're getting very close to that one. The next thing we measure is the cost per disposition. So this is the net cost of disposing a single case. This also does take into account indigent defense. So here you will see, if you keep flipping and go to page 47 and look at the bottom two, you can see the net cost per disposition by judge, by court. For misdemeanors in the center chart here. So you'll see that misdemeanors run anywhere from $428 per case to dispose of to $613 per case to dispose of. And then felonies are running anywhere from $651 up to $1,840 per felony to dispose of. And then the average net cost per disposition on misdemeanors, you can see it for the last year where it's ranged, and then also for felonies on the next chart on page 48. Okay, measure 12, which is jail bed days, the number of jail bed days consumed. This is broken down again by judge, so you know how long defendants in that courtroom are staying in jail bed days. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over again to the second quarter on page 50. For the second quarter through the second quarter of FY 2018, you have the misdemeanor cases and the average number of jail bed days by misdemeanors, and then you have them for felonies. So you'll see on misdemeanors we range anywhere from 724 jail bed days to 2,489. And on felonies, we range anywhere from 1,355 up to 4,800. And then you'll see the jail bed days by quarter. Awesome, thank you. for both misdemeanors and felonies for the past year. Okay, and then the average length of stay. So that was overall. This is the average length of stay by defendant by court. So you'll see misdemeanors. I'm going to flip the page again to second quarter to page 53. Misdemeanors range from 22 to 31. And then felonies range from 35 to 54. Joel's been doing a lot of work also on this with the judiciary on creating some standards on release that I hope will help some of these numbers as well. Measure 13 is disposition rates, the number of disposed cases as a percentage of the active caseload, the overall caseload. So you can see, if again I flip to the next page and go up to the second quarter, misdemeanors, 406, anywhere from 463 up to 1,671, and then felonies, anywhere from 116 up to 783.
It's a huge difference.
Yes, sir. So it gives you an actual average of the actual overall load by that court. And then again, you can look at the whole year, look back for a year on page 57. And then the actual disposition rate for the second quarter is on page 59. For misdemeanors and felonies. That's an overview of all of our current measures. And I do know that Judge Salas Mendoza has talked to me about when I know she's looking at where district courts may be having some struggles or heavier workloads, and I know she's trying to work with them to specifically on an individual basis address those issues. Are there any questions?
The data that Joel collected in the study with Dr. Favello, has he presented those to the court yet? I don't recall.
I think, yes, they did. Yes, Dr. Favello came and did some presentations up in a courtroom, and then Joel presented them directly to the court on a recidivism study.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Yes, and we do have requests in this budget to continue the study and expand to some other areas.
Those were some really good information. I know I met with him, and it was just really eye-opening.
And some of the studies we have in going forward again are, I think, I don't want to say groundbreaking, but I mean they're really progressive. Our next item is to do the budget register overview, but we don't have anything on the register to overview from today because we haven't added anything. So we're actually, is there anything from tomorrow anymore?
That's it, because tomorrow we're going to be posted for executive accountability policy and then move on.
Okay.
Permanent.
Okay. And tomorrow you guys will be able to see our first attempt at trying to get away from the spreadsheets more. And we'll be open and welcome to your feedback on that, but we really are working on not all needing stronger glasses by the end of budget. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? No? Okay. I think that's it for today. We're adjourned.
This concludes today's meeting at 4:23 p.m.